Get Pucked.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Get Pucked podcast. Matt and Vito here today. Skeleton staff, unfortunately, with some we got some IRs on our own team, but we're here today to talk a little bit about the Habs. How you doing, Vito?
Not too bad.
Not too bad.
How are
You
you,
have a
man?
good holiday.
The holiday's always great. Spend time with family, get a couple of drinks in, get some good food,
Lovely.
time off.
True.
Come on.
True.
People who don't like the holidays, I don't know if I could trust them.
My goodness. Hot takes all around. Right out the gate. Well, let me add this. And I had a good one too. Thanks for asking. So let me just also add to the fact that given with all the fun that you've suggested that you get with the holidays of the spending time with family, whatever, there was also quite a bit of hockey. And the Habs have routinely a long road trip in and around this time of the year. And most of the time, at least in recent memory, that road trip has always been mostly met with less than optimal results, given that they got to go to Florida.
They've always looked like a team that just wanted to get through it and go to the holidays.
Yeah. So it hasn't been always daisies and rainbows. That said, something happened this year, and I think it merits a little bit of talking about. The Canadiens have won 4 out of the 5 games on this road trip. And more importantly, for those that for some reason might not know, they beat 4 of the past 4 Stanley Cup winning teams. These are not teams that won the cup and then fell off a cliff. These are all top teams in the NHL. And they beat them. And they looked well doing it. So with one little hiccup, which of course had to happen, they lost to the Chicago Blackhawks, who are the worst team in the league right now. That aside, it has been a remarkable stretch, and they're on their way back now. And so what that ultimately led to, just again, for those that might not be in the know, is the team now is sitting just a point or two behind a wild card spot. They are, in fact, in the mix. And as crazy as that seems, given how we were talking about the team and how many people were talking about the team, a couple weeks ago, the fact remains that they are here now. And what's happening is we have to have this discussion that many people are saying that this is both a blessing and a curse, saying, yeah, it's all nice to win and stuff, but the team really needed another top 5 pick, needed another shot at a lottery. And a lot of other people are saying, no, this is precisely where the team needs to be. This is what's best for them. And you want to see the product on the ice improving and such. So I'm asking you right now, and I think it's hilarious, but I'm asking anyways, is this what's best for the team, or would they be better off if somehow they just go on a huge losing streak and they bottom out again and they try to go for another top pick?
No, I think the Habs were in a perfect situation in the sense that it was, if they would have finished at the bottom, you would have been like, okay, great, it's part of the rebuild. You would have been able to rationalize that and get that lottery pick. But there were also, we spoke about it a few times during the offseason at the beginning of the season, that we wanted to see some progress. We wanted to see them not necessarily in the mix fighting for a playoff spot per se, but at least take the next step. And that next step seems to have been a leap more than a step. So for me, the way I see it and the way I saw it before is that it was a win-win situation in a sense. Yeah, it would have been grueling to go through another long season of a bottom 5 team and all that, but we kept saying is that if they were gonna be a bottom 5 team, at least the games would be entertaining. Now, at the start of the season, they looked like a bottom 5 team, and the games were not entertaining. It was brutal to watch. It was actually hard. It actually looked worse than last year, right? So now you see that they're starting to get used to the hybrid system. They're starting to get used to how things are. They're gelling together. Everybody's healthy for the first time, more or less, with a couple of people feeling under the weather, Laney and whatnot. But this is the first time we're seeing almost a full roster. Right, and the way I see it too is that I rather see them fighting and showing character than going the other way and getting used to being a losing team. So, yes, in a sense, would it have been really good for the rebuild to get another top end talent? 100%. But the talent is there, and they're showing that they can compete with the best of them. they're not contenders by any stretch. They're not there yet, for sure. They doesn't just because they're not a bottom five doesn't mean they're not going to still get a draft a good asset. They will. Now, what that player develops to is a different story. That time will tell. But now you're starting to see that they're in the third season of their rebuild. You know, you're starting to see they're taking the next step. And even if they do drop significantly from here to the rest of the season, what we saw here is something to be encouraged by.
I think 100%. And I think honestly, at this particular point, I don't really understand the people that are out there that are upset about winning. At the end of the day, you want your team to be successful. I mean, I know it's a rebuild and they're in the rebuild, but this isn't year one or even year two. You're about midway through, you hope, and maybe you're starting to go over that hump. You have a bona fide, legitimate superstar in the making coming over from Russia, hopefully next year. You see the clips, you see the action, you see what he's doing over there. You know what that's going to do because you can now point and look at what Patrick Laine did and just injecting that level of superstar onto the team. What all of a sudden you can mark it. You can mark how the team was prior to him being here and how the team played just after him being here. And I know that in hockey, it's not just one guy, but one guy can make a pretty big difference. And so
It's an
when you
impact
start,
player.
without
There's a reason
question,
why they put that label on it. It's an impact player.
And so now you're bringing in another guy next year. And you got Michael Hage, who's doing fantastic things. He's probably not next year, but he's also coming. I mean, you got guys that are playing in Laval that are really making a strong argument to get a promotion. You got the young guys that are on the team that are starting to show progression for the most part. I mean, this is what you would want. I can't understand how you can make the argument and say, oh, no, you need another top five, maybe even next year too. Give me the Gavin McKenna's and give me this. Sure. But I bet you teams like the top teams in the league would want these guys. Everybody wants them. It's ideal, but you want to make sure that the team is moving forward. And I think that given what we just saw and given how well they played and against who they played and the fact that they're in the mix, whether they're a bubble team or not, whether they're a wild card team or not, whether they make the playoffs or they just miss it, I think that is a perfect place for this team to be to prove that they're now on the uptick, that they've made that, like you said, that leap, that next step. I'm kind of like, I'm not totally baffled by the people's take about, oh, they need another top five, because to their point, yeah, of course it's going to help. But that player they draft is only going to be there in 3 years, probably. This team is looking to start making grounds, I would imagine, as of next year. Like this year, it was in the mix. Next year at the golf tournament, when they talk, they're going to probably say,
yeah.
we want to be competitive. We want to go for it.
It's going to depend on the moves that they make in the offseason, right?
Without question. But now you got to bear in mind a couple things here. If the team plays the way that they played over this holiday season and they continue that level of play, let's say all things being equal, they continue that level of play to the end of the season and they miss the playoffs by a point or whatever, right? I mean, that would prove to me that you're just one or two pieces away from being able to get into the playoffs, to be able to be a perennial playoff team.
Well, and you're going to get some of the people that are going to come out and say, "Oh, look what happened to the Habs. They're now a middle draft team again." You know.
Yes and no, because this will be the start of getting into the playoffs year in and year out and not living in mediocrity for 10 years.
Well, and there you go. So while those people will say that, there's a difference between living in mediocrity before, where you just relied on a Carey Price to get you into the playoffs and whatever happens, versus you have a whole team now and you've got talented players and you've got a prospect pool and you've got, there's a lot of upside to the team and so on, versus back then it was mediocrity and you had no high-end talent. Your high-end talent was Carey Price, then there was years of PK Subban, and then there was years of mixed in with a bit of Markov, and you had some Pacioretty, but it was nothing that was elite per se. It was always a team defensive structure that just walked into the playoffs with the occasional season that was like, yeah. So
that's what it was.
Now, instead of relying on just a goalie, because clearly the Montreal Canadiens are not relying on just their goalie, and you look at what's coming up, and what they have today, it's you just see it in a way where it's not necessarily mediocrity. It's the next step of a rebuild. That's how I'm seeing it. People might not agree, And they might be like, no, we needed another 2 picks, especially the Gavin McKenna draft. Already it's funny because you see some people that were complaining about the upcoming draft. Oh, when Montreal was a bottom 5 team this year or earlier on in the season, and then they were saying, oh, it's another draft where you have Slafkovsky type, where there's nobody that is running away with the first overall pick, and there's nobody running away, and they're complaining on that front. But then they're also complaining that when Montreal is playing well and they're in the mix, they're saying, oh, well, we need another top end talent.
Yeah, but this it's just proven my point, right? So this I like to think it's a vocal minority that's just not happy with anything, and that anything the team does is wrong. I just can't understand how you can look at it and say you have your young core, they're there, you have legitimate top end elite talent coming up. They're on their way. They're already in the pipeline. So
Okay,
how is it not more beneficial for the team to get success and get a taste, perhaps, of playoff experience?
Look, Suzuki, in my opinion, has another small step in terms of point production. His overall two-way game is fantastic,
He's
but he's
a
got
point a game now.
He's a point a game
basically.
player. Cole Caulfield remains to be seen if he's going to hit the 40 goal mark, but he's on pace for 40 goals, 70 plus points. Lane Hutson is at the moment, anyways, a Calder candidate.
Yes.
Okay, so he's arrived. Forget arriving; he's there.
Yep.
Okay, now you have Slafkovsky, who still you could tell his game needs to grow. There's flashes and moments where he's doing good things. There's also moments where you're looking and say he's not using his body, and we saw that last year. And I think he's going to be one of those guys that are going to be late bloomers. Where you're going to see some progression and some production along the way, but it's going to take time for him to fully get to where his development plan is and to his ceiling.
Boy,
But
he's getting ripped, huh? Online fans
it's
lately.
I don't agree with it, honestly, but we'll get there. So then you have the Michael Hage, you have Demidov, you've got other players, and you got Heineman, who's doing great things, and people have projected Heineman to be a very good player. The way he's playing and the way he's scoring goals, who knows? Like maybe he's a really good third liner, but he would top out as a second line winger when there's injuries or whatever. But right now, with the way he's playing, that's a very good piece to have in your roster. He's physically strong. He can score goals. So when you're looking at the body of work and all the players that I'm naming, and I even forgot to mention a few with Fowler and all that stuff, Montreal's in good shape.
You didn't
Montreal's a
even mention
whole.
Reinbacher.
I didn't mention Reinbacher, not because
Mayu,
I didn't
Beck.
mention those guys. One, because I kind of feel like they're implied, and at the moment they're still like Reinbacher. You still don't know what you got with him, right? He got hurt. You
Fair.
didn't get to see him. So for me I'd be including him because of where he was drafted, not so much because of what he's done. He hasn't done anything.
Well, yeah.
Mayu, I didn't bring him up because he had a strong start and he's been having a lot of difficulties lately. So I'm leaving him there. But yes, he's a talented player and we got him, and he's a right-handed defenseman and whatnot. So there's all these names and there's all these players and all this, and they all have their own skill sets and all that. Like, when was the last time Montreal had a pipeline where you could literally start the piece and say, oh, we have too many players. We have too many good players coming up, and at some point we're gonna have to make big decisions with some of them.
I can't recall.
So I mean, this isn't the years of when we overhyped the Ben Maxwells of the world. These are actually talented players. There's talented players. Not all of them are going to be top line, top pairing guys, but they're going to be players that will be coveted at some point, or they're going to make an impact to the team, or they're going to fill a role, whatever the case may be. They're going to be that. Some will be a bit better, some will be a little less, but they're going to be. They were scouted properly as far as we've seen, and they were drafted properly. Everyone could put the Reinbacher question to the side for now. It is what it is for now, but everything else is there. So Montreal is a promising team, and I love seeing what I'm seeing. And Suzuki and Caulfield, and Slaf, but mainly Suzuki and Caulfield, they were signed long-term deals, and they're very young.
Yeah, Goalie also signed. He's around.
I didn't even
time.
mention him.
It's another one. I know. No. Listen, there's a bunch there. I think realistically, just given the nature of what you said, at some point in the near future, I suspect there's going to be a very big trade that's going to happen. There's too many bodies. There's too many bodies that are pushing too much, that are justifiable NHL guys to play, or at least bring up and give them a shot, and there's just not enough room. So, yeah, you're going to have people leave the team. Dvorak's are going to go. and the Armias are going to go, and eventually the Gallies and the Andersons are going to go, and you're going to need to replace them, and you're going to be able to do that. But I think even with that happening, you're still having too many guys that are too talented, and your best bet is to package to bring in one big piece.
You could
and I
kind
don't
of
know when
already
and
fill
how.
in some slots based on people, on certain prospects, skill set and whatnot. You could kind of like start interchanging, and Dvorak is likely going to be replaced by a one back. Armia is already going to be replaced by Heineman, but when Armia actually goes, it's still another roster spot that's open for somebody else to come in. Josh Anderson, you got a couple of years left, and as far as this season goes, anyways, as a third liner, he turned it around as a third liner. The only difference, if that guy was being paid $3 million versus 5.5, nobody'd be batting an eye about him, especially on the third line.
Without question.
Gallagher's having a fantastic season in comparison to the last couple of years, but again, it's because he's paid $6.5 million for services rendered. It's too much in its age, right?
Yeah.
But once he's gone, while we're going to be looking and say, hey, yay, the Habs open up all that cap space, let's not forget that guy is a heart and soul type of guy, and he is a vet, and he does kind of get a line going still to this day, especially when they're kind of funking it out.
It's one of those situations with Galley where I feel like this is equivalent to like in boxing, where you have an older boxer and they come back and they give you a fight where you're like, wow, did they just find the fountain of youth? But that was their last fight. Then you see them in the next fight and they're knocked out in the first round. So I don't want that to be the case, but it's the way he plays hockey. It's the nature of the injuries that he's had. And you want to see him sail off into the sunset. I honestly don't want to see Gallagher on another team. I don't want to see him traded off for an 8th round pick.
I don't
or some
think
nonsense.
He will be. You know what? To be honest, I think that Galley, once his contract is up, it's up. Like, maybe he's going to have the heart and desire to play and continue playing, but I think his body's going to tell him otherwise. Like last year, you saw, like, it almost felt like the writing was on the wall last year. That he came out this year, and I've always said every good player,
gives you one more.
One more.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying.
Before the massive drop off happens.
Well, we'll see, because he's not leaving the team this year, and he'll be there next year, and we'll see if this was that year. But one thing's for certain: the future certainly seems bright. There is an interesting thing that is occurring, though, with certain of these younger guys. In particular, we were talking about Slafkovsky before you had mentioned, and I want to touch on this because this is another thing that I think this fan base in particular does, maybe more so than the others. That's a little bit disappointing. They like to be overly critical of the young guys. Like there is merit in some of the criticism, in particular for Slafkovsky of late. His game is not there. I mean, is he trade him for a pack of pucks kind of deal? No. And is he a bust? No. But the fan base likes to find a player and move on that guy until something happens. For example, I feel like it's the same crowd that was going after Doc for weeks and weeks and weeks. Doc has come back from injury. We've given him enough time. He's a bust. This is why Chicago didn't want him. All these things, on and on and on. He can't score. And they were just ragging the kid. All of a sudden, Doc has been looking pretty good. Found his game. Is throwing the body again. Got the game winner in the overtime game against Colorado the other night. Is looking good. And now, where are they? Crickets. But where does the voice all spin to? Slafkovsky now is the new target. And he's soft. And he's lazy. And he's this and he's that. Guys, he's younger than Lane Hutson. You got to remember that. You look at Lane Hutson, you see a baby. He's got a baby face and he's small. And you're like, this is a young guy. And you look at big lumbering Slaf and you think he's older and a more of a veteran than he is. He's a kid. He is an actual kid. And a guy of his size and the style of his play, it will take time. Like Vito mentioned, like you said, you see flashes. You see flashes now, but he needs to work on the consistency and being able to find that game and give it in more night in and night out than less. But the people coming after him, I mean, I don't know what your take is on this. Maybe you're one of these guys that are out there and you're like, Slaf is terrible. I don't think so. But
No,
like,
listen,
where is the hate coming from?
but if Slaf wants to take something from the doc experiences, you want to silence those critics, you want to silence those people, go show it on the ice. It's not about his points, because his points, he's putting up primary assists and all that. He's
A
playing
lot
on the
of
top line.
secondaries, but
He's got a lot. He's got a lot of primaries and secondary assists, but he's got points. The thing with him is that he's got probably one of the better shots in the team. He doesn't use it enough. In addition, he doesn't use his body enough. So it's the shift by shift play with him that people are just looking and saying, why is it that you give me one shift where I'm seeing potentially a power forward, or I'm seeing the guy that we drafted, and then the next shift, it's like you're doing the things that you were doing when you first got into the NHL, maybe to a lesser extent there, because at the end of the day, you still got a bit more experience than then. But it's those
the
things.
consistency.
His consistency is off, but at the same time, like you said, he's very young, and his style of game that people are that they're hoping to develop and they're hoping to get and mature it that way, it takes time to get there. If you go look at the people that he was often compared to on his draft year, or just shortly after, the types of players, be it the Rantanens or whatever, it took not Draisaitl, but the body they were looking and the physical and the skating and all that stuff. When you look at those guys when they first got into the NHL, it took time before they got to the player that we see today. I'm not suggesting that Slafkovsky's ever going to be a Rantanen. I'm not suggesting that he'll ever be a Draisaitl. 100-point players like that don't come around all the time. But if he could be a lighter version of those guys, then Montreal's great. If he could end up being a 70 to 80 point power forward that pots in those between 30 and 40 goals somewhere in there, then they got what they wanted to get from him. But he has to make the room, make the space on the ice. He has to be a physical presence. It's going to take time to get to that physical maturity when you're looking at a kid who's essentially he's not even legal across the world yet. You know what I mean? He's not even, like, it takes time. So I don't agree with everybody bashing him and going after him and attacking him. But you know how Montreal is. Montreal always needs a scapegoat. They always need somebody that they got to critique because they expect nothing but perfection. We expect every player to be playing at 100% night in and night out. That's not going to be the case. And I think part of this administration and part of the message that has been conveyed during the rebuild is exactly that. You're not going to get a perfect game or the same game every time. You're going to get different players stepping up at different times. Last year, people were critiquing and criticizing Slafkovsky for the first half. Then the second half of the season, he came in and he was playing at a 70-point pace, and everybody was like, Slaf is going to take the next step next year, and he's going to be the 70 points from right out of the gate. But that doesn't always work out that way. We don't know what the second half is going to be after the Four Nations tournament and after all of that stuff. Well, who knows how he comes out? Right now, he probably needs us to step away from the game a little bit. But the fact that he's going in and he's still trying and still doing what he has to do, and they're still keeping him on the top line.
Do you think he's injured?
It's possible that he could be. He might have a nagging injury. I mean, everybody at this point of the season is probably feeling some bumps and bruises.
Because I bring it up because a lot of people are suggesting he might have an injury that's not severe enough to miss time, but it's impacting his game because he is noticeably not the same dude that he was. There was
rumors
ago.
At the beginning of the season that he was dealing with a minor back injury, so maybe he might be dealing with those back pains. It could be back spasms, or it could be just overall, something that it's not getting enough time to heal. Like somebody gets a pinched nerve, they come in and they just keep putting in a bunch of products and whatnot. Like, we don't know. I don't want to make excuses for him either.
I mention it because I don't like the narrative that people are attacking him because he's lazy and soft. I don't think that he is. I think that you can tell from the way he is as a person, the personality that he has and the passion that he has for the game, and the anger that he would put out there when he didn't play well, and when he would go and try to get up in the faces of other players at the end of last season, stuff like, that he's not afraid to use the body. And that he has often said that when he's on the line with Suzuki and Caulfield, he feels he's a good fit because he can get into the corners and he can muscle people around and get the pucks for those guys. So it's not because
But that's the thing.
he's not
He's doing
like
that
that.
less and less. He's doing that less and less right now. He's not going in the corners and retrieving the puck as much.
And I don't think it's a personal thing. I think it's because there is a chance that this is a guy who might be playing with something. I don't know, and maybe he isn't, but it's my belief that I think there's something there.
I don't think he's lazy and soft by any stretch. I just think you're looking at a person who doesn't even have their man strength yet. You know what I mean? I'm looking at a kid who has shown before that he wasn't lazy and soft. There's obviously something there. We're not in the room to really know what's going on with him. But if he is playing with an injury of some sort, I would hope that the coaching staff knows and is like, okay, this is we're not punishing you, but go take a game or two. Just go on a short-term injury of some kind and go rest and whatever. But if he's adamant about playing, or he's like, okay, let's just get through and get closer to February because then we're gonna have a good time off. I don't want to miss any games. Then that's a different story. But at the same time, I don't find he's hurting the team. If he was hurting the team, it's a different story. He's just not boosting the team to where we hoped he could have boosted it.
Yeah, I mean,
but he's not hurting the team.
No, I don't think he's hurt. I mean, there are some lapses I've noticed, and this doesn't have anything to do with going to like he's done some. There's some passes that I'm like, I'm not sure why he did that. Like you say, there's some opportunities he had to shoot that he doesn't like.
He forces the play a bit too much.
There's things that are evolving with his game, but to go back to the original thing that we were talking about again, it's like you can't not have a whipping boy. It seems like that's just universally the case with this team. It doesn't matter if they're good or not good. The fans go after somebody.
I think some fans think that by having the whipping boy and keep whipping on that player, they're the ones that are getting the player to be that.
I mean, to think that you have any kind of impact on the team is a delusion. But you got guys that are always being whipped on. So I think Matheson, for example, takes a tremendous amount of heat, but he's a vet. And not to say that that's acceptable, but I imagine it's affecting him potentially less if he is reading that than a guy who like Slaf might be younger, more plugged into social media and stuff, might be hearing about it from different places, and maybe it's affecting. Plus, he has that label. That's always the most important thing.
There's two different means of
number
whipping.
one pick thing will follow him forever.
But there's two types of whipping boys that that Habs fans go after. The one that they want off the roster, Matheson, because they've moved on. We got Lane Hutson now. We don't need him. Yeah. There's that one. There's always that one whipping boys, that scapegoat. And then there's the one where that was, like you said, drafted high enough. There was somebody else that certain fans would have preferred, or they're not playing to the ceiling or to the scouting reports. And those are the two that there are right now. So it's. And then there's technically a third one, which is the one that they trade for, which was Doc, right? They traded Romanov, and people want to, we could have had this, we could have had that. But those are so right now, if you remember last year or a couple of years ago, rather, it was Droy.
Yep.
Right? Who they acquired him for?
Yeah.
Who they traded for to get him, and then the fact that he was getting paid X, and then it was like, okay, we had enough of him. It's time to move on from him. We want him off the roster. They just kept whipping on this guy. Right, so Montreal has always been like that. There's one player that they always want to beat the crap out of, and demoralize that player just to say get them out. There's fans that literally think that they have an impact in that sense, and then there's the ones that Slaf. Next one is he's batter up, right? He's already got the heat to even play game. It's Ryan Bacher, and you know it.
Yeah. Listen, and again, I'm not trying to say that people are not entitled to an opinion. You most certainly are, and given the way of social media, and if you're on the Blue Sky or you're on X or whatever, and wherever you're going now to make your opinions public, you go right ahead. But if you're going to make your opinion public, then you should be open to be criticized for that opinion because you're saying it out loud. And I think those that are out there that are ragging so hard on these types of players, in particular Slaf of late, he hasn't been playing well. So your assessment of his game is correct. But then that's where you should probably stop. To go and start calling him a bust, to go and start calling him soft and lazy, to start to criticize and attack him on a personal level because he's having a bad stretch, I think you need to sit back and kind of be like, maybe I'll give him some time. Maybe
And the
he's
funny
just
part
turned
is,
20. Maybe there's a lot more to come. Maybe he's a big frame individual, and I got to go look at comparables and see how long it took them to kind of get the ball rolling. There's more to it than that. So I don't know. I just wanted to bring that one up because, especially after last game, we're putting out our own X comments and tweets and things and what have you, and I'm out there and I'm seeing it, and it's like a parade of a vocal minority, but very active, that are like, he's a bust, get rid of him, he's lazy, he's soft, he's this. And I was like, okay, he's having a bad game, guys, but like let's pump the brakes a little bit here. Like, call him a bust. Like,
no,
towards the end of last season, if you were to prorate his stats, I mean, come on.
Support him, encourage him, stand up when he does score a goal. Make him feel that thing that, you know what they said when like Laney scored, that feeling that everybody got.
Yeah,
I bet you anything that gives any player the enough adrenaline and boost to continue going. Right now, it's like it weighs heavy. It could weigh heavy.
Let him come back home. They've been on this long road trip, but I'm in full agreement with that. I think if he ends up getting a goal, I think the crowd should go insane, and I think you're going to see that massive Slaf smile that he has, and it's going to be great.
And if you look at his point totals too, right? His point totals are very comparable to the other people that were drafted in the top 5 with him.
Yeah, like it's funny because I don't want to take too much more on this, but the points are not really the concern. It's the eye test. He gets a lot of those second touches, and like the goals that he has, oftentimes he puts himself in front of the net of late, and it's going off of him and stuff, and that's good too. It counts, but it's like it's how does he look, less so about his points, which is interesting because if I told you and said, I give you 2 players, one looks great on the ice, he's dynamic, he's involved, but he has 30 points on the season. But then I tell you another player, every time I see him, it doesn't look like he's doing much, and he's lumbering out there and this and that, but he finished with 75 points. Who are you taking?
No, I get it.
So like at the end of the day, you got to pump the brakes a bit. But one guy on the complete opposite spectrum that I want to talk about, because this is something I don't think anybody of us really expected, Jakub Dobes. Who, how, what? There was promise. Big 6'5", 200 and something pound goalie, playing very well in the minors. He comes up when Primo goes on waivers. You're like, okay, they can't go and get a veteran. We talked about this last episode. I personally said and thought, not that it was readily available, but they should do what they can to go get a veteran back up and get the kid back down so he can keep getting his reps and playing and developing. They put him against 2 of the top teams in the NHL. They threw him in there. Baptism by fire. Go out there, kid. Tap on the ass. Get out there. Okay. You're like, oh, man, please just don't get lit up. Lose. If you're going to lose, whatever. We're expecting to lose probably. These are really good teams, but just don't get lit up. Don't get lit up. He has 1 goal allowed in 2 games. Shutout in his debut. Basically won them the game against Colorado. I mean, wow. Small sample size. The smallest of sample sizes. But now I ask the question again. Given what you just saw, is there that much of a desire and a need primarily to go get yourself another goalie? Or is this your guy?
No, you still look. You still
really?
look. Okay. Still look, because hold on a second. Dobes, yes, he's done well. He's played 2 games. He did very well, exceeded expectations. But at the same time, let's not make a mistake here. The Colorado game, the Montreal Canadiens, he made some key saves. He kept them in, but the Montreal Canadiens team limited the Colorado Avalanche to just 23 shots on goal. And yes, among those there were some high danger chances, but it wasn't only Dobes. It was a collective effort in that game, right? So again, I still think that they should still look at the goaltending position.
Are you a Dobes hater?
I'm not a Dobes hater. I'm actually the one who said that Dobes is the guy they should keep and just look at that before, when they were going to send Primo down. I said it last episode. Go back if you want to.
Go look at the tapes. All right.
Go look at the tapes. But with that being said, you still look because it's his first 2 games. And typically players, when they first come up on their first 2 games in the NHL, the adrenaline's there, the hype is there. People don't have the scouting report on them just yet, not fully anyways. So it's like you're figuring it out. Now, at the same time, he is 6'5" and is a big frame, and he's very mobile for a guy his size. I could also look at it in a different angle. The other angle that I could see is that Monty is your vet. And I'm not suggesting that Dobes becomes the number 1, But Monty is a vet at this point in his career. He's not 23, he's not 24, he's in his prime years. So even if you go and get a veteran, what are we looking at? At 32, 33, 34? Montreal traded a Jake Allen that was that and got whatever assets they could.
Yeah.
So if Dobes is the stopgap until the young Jacob Fowler makes it to the NHL and it works, then go for it. But to suggest that Montreal shouldn't look and pursue a backup goalie of any kind, I think they should. But I think it's also going to coincide with where they are in the standings and where they're going to be around trade deadline and things like that. If they could continue with this tandem until that point, until they really know where they're at in the standings and whether they're officially in the mix, and this wasn't just a very good run, because even the best teams in the NHL go on bad runs that change the standings a little bit. Montreal happens to be on a massive heater.
Yep.
They're playing against some really good teams that were all during the holiday mix.
Yep.
We'll see what happens in a few weeks from now. Yay, it's fun. We get to see the Habs winning and all that, but I'm not ready to, put my foot on the gas and say go do everything to make it into the playoffs and go get the veteran and all that. But you still look to see where you can improve for sure.
Yeah, the improving of the team is obviously something that's going to be an.
But Monty is your vet now.
He is.
I've been saying this. I've been saying this for a while, and I think that's one of the reasons why he got signed for the next few years is because
he'll move into
the vet spot when Jacob Fowler eventually comes.
Monty has played very well. I think given where he came from as a waiver claim and given to where he is now, I think Monty proved he's an NHL goalie through and through. He has some nights where he really does look like a top goalie. He does. But there are many nights where he lets in a ton of bananas, and you can tell he's like, all right, he's not in the upper echelon of goalies. That said, given what Dobes has done in these two games, against these two teams in particular, if you would have done this to Buffalo and if you would have done this to, I don't know, whatever, the Blackhawks or whatever, okay, you're like, okay, great. I'm happy that they won those games, but the test wasn't a big test. He stopped some of the best players in the NHL. Your point is valid. The team stopped those shots against Colorado and they played well, like they should. That's their jobs. They should be blocking those shots and they should be making it hard for shots to get through. That said, I think from what I've seen, from the kid's demeanor out there, he didn't scramble. He looked calm. He looked collected. He looks huge in net.
You want a hot take? Oh, I don't even know if it's much of a hot take. It's probably a fact more than anything. He's done more in 2 games than Caden Primo has done in the last.
So I'll add
in
to
his
that.
Entire short NHL career.
So okay, that's a bit of a bit much there. What he did, however, was win against. He has more wins against playoff teams that will be in the playoffs than Caden Primo ever had. The wins that Caden Primo have or earned were against teams that are not playoff teams.
But it's great. It's even the way Dobes is playing in front of the net. There's more confidence.
Well, and this is what I'm saying. This is exactly the point that I'm trying to make. I'm now suggesting, I've now seen 2 games and I've now gone and done a little bit of homework because admittedly, I don't see everything in across the organization. And I heard good things about the kid, but I never really saw him play. I went and looked up some of his past games just to give him a glance to see more than just the 2 games I witnessed at the NHL level. I mean, there's a lot there. And what I would like to see now moving forward in this new year is he should be playing at least once a week. This shouldn't be every 2-week thing. You shouldn't be riding Monty 3 games in a row, even with the appropriate breaks in between.
I think he's given enough confidence to the coaching staff to say we're going to change the.
You're going one on, one off. That's
or 2-1,
perhaps. But tell me that the way he's playing and look at Monty and what he did, and I mean Monty played really good against some of the other teams. Don't get me wrong, but it was Monty that was in net against Chicago. That the team looked terrible too, but he let in some really bad goals as well. Let's not kid ourselves. I'm not suggesting Dobes is going to come and take his job today, but I think the team definitely needs to do one-on-one off with these 2 and see what you got with this guy, because who knows? He's coming on. People are talking about it. It's like giving shades of Halak. Came out of nowhere, right? So exciting to see. It's an exciting aspect that I didn't expect, and I'm encouraged about. And now we come to the end of this episode, and now I'm asking you guys, what do you think? What do you want to see in terms of Dobes? Would you like to see him play every other night? Do you see something there? Could he fight Monty for the number one in this year? Is that something that's possible? Let me know in the comments. Let us know there. Let us know also your take about Slaf. Are you one of the guys? And please, if you are, I'm not coming after you. Just justify it. Do you think he's a bust for real, given the sample size of what you've seen? Or are you one of the people that are saying, hey, man, pump the brakes on him. He's a kid. He's young. Let us know about that, too, and any of the other topics we talked about today. Thanks very much. Happy New Year, of course. 2025 first episode. So thanks for being with us. Check us out on the socials. X, we're on Blue Sky as well. We'll have that link posted on the bottom as well. And that's it. So you got anything you want to add there, Vito?
See you soon.
See you soon. Thanks very much. So for Vito, I'm Matt, and this was
Get Pucked.